Chapter 1. The Woman Who Didn't Bow. Should have known the moment he walked in that my life was about to change. But I didn't. I was too busy balancing 3 plates of overpriced pasta and a tray of champagne flutes to notice the shift in the restaurant's atmosphere, the way conversations dimmed, the way even the air seemed to tighten with something unspoken and dangerous. Trattoria Luminosa was the kind of place where Manhattan's elite came to be seen. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, waiters in crisp white shirts gliding between tables like ghosts. I'd worked here for 6 months, long enough to recognize the hierarchy. Old money sat by the windows, new money near the bar, and everyone else fought for what was left. I was nobody. Just another waitress grinding through law school, one shift at a time. Excuse me. The voice was sharp, entitled, and far too loud. This wine is room temperature. Do you people not understand the concept of chilled Chardonnay? I turned to find a blonde woman in a dress that cost more than my rent, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing toward the bottle on the table. Beside her sat a man in an expensive suit, scrolling through his phone with the detached boredom of someone used to being disappointed. I apologize, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll bring you a fresh bottle immediately. You'll bring me a manager, she snapped, her eyes raking over me like I was dirt on her Louboutins. And maybe a brain while you're at it. God, where do they find you people? Heat flooded my cheeks. Around us, other diners pretended not to listen, but I could feel their eyes. The man with her didn't even look up. I opened my mouth to respond, probably with something that would get me fired, when I felt it. Presence heavy, absolute, like gravity had shifted and pulled the entire room toward one point. I looked up. He stood in the entrance, framed by the soft glow of the evening lights filtering through the glass doors. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that looked hand-stitched by someone who understood power. Dark hair swept back, sharp jawline and eyes. God, those eyes, cold and gray like winter storms. But it wasn't his looks that stole my breath. It was the way he moved, slow, deliberate. Like a predator who knew the hunt was already over. Every head in the restaurant turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the blonde woman fell silent, her painted lips parting in something close to awe. He didn't acknowledge anyone. His gaze swept the room once, calculating, assessing, and then it landed on me. Time stopped. I couldn't look away. His eyes held mine with an intensity that felt almost physical, like he could see straight through my skin into every secret I'd ever kept. My pulse hammered in my throat, and for one irrational moment I thought, he knows me. But that was impossible. I'd never seen him before in my life. The maitre d' materialized at his side, nervous and fawning. Mr. Volkov, your table is ready. Right this way, sir. Volkov. The name hit me like cold water. I didn't follow organized crime, didn't read tabloids, but even I had heard whispers. The Volkov family didn't just own businesses in New York. They owned New York. Money, politicians, fear. Everything flowed through them. And this man, Dominic Volkov, was their king. He moved past me, close enough that I caught the scent of expensive cologne, and something darker, something dangerous. His shoulder brushed mine, barely a touch, but it sent electricity racing down my spine. Careful, he murmured, his voice low and rough, meant only for me. You're shaking. Then he was gone, following the maitre d' to a private corner booth, leaving me standing there like I'd been struck by lightning. Are you deaf? The blonde's screech snapped me back to reality. I said get me a manager, but I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at him. Dominic Volkov sat in the shadows, his profile sharp and unreadable. A man in a dark suit leaned in, whispering something urgent, but Dominic's gaze never wavered. It stayed locked on me, across the entire restaurant, through the crowd and the noise and the chaos. Watching, waiting. Something twisted in my chest. Fear, curiosity, something far more dangerous than either. You know what? I said quietly, setting the wine bottle down on the blonde's table. I quit. Her mouth fell open. What did you just... But I was already walking away, untying my apron, my hands trembling with adrenaline I didn't understand. I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know why those 2 words, "you're shaking," had unraveled something inside me. I just knew I couldn't stay in that room with his eyes on me for 1 more second. I pushed through the kitchen doors, tossed my apron onto the counter, and grabbed my bag from the employee lockers. My manager shouted something, but I didn't stop. I shoved through the back exit into the alley, gulping down the cool night air like I'd been drowning. What the hell was that? I leaned against the brick wall, pressing my palms to my eyes. I'd just quit my job, the job I needed. Because some mafia king looked at me like what? Like he knew me? Like I mattered? I was losing my mind. Footsteps echoed in the alley. Slow, deliberate. My heart stopped. I looked up. Dominic Volkov stood at the mouth of the alley, backlit by the streetlights, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "You walk away from things often?" he asked, his voice carrying easily through the darkness. I straightened, forcing steel into my spine. "Only when they're not worth staying for." His lips curved, just barely. Not quite a smile, something far more dangerous. "What's your name? Why do you care?" He took a step closer, then another, the distance between us shrinking like he was drawing me in without even touching me. "Because," he said softly, his gray eyes burning into mine. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into my boardroom, and when you do, everyone in that room is going to learn the truth." My breath caught. "What truth?" He stopped inches away, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to see the darkness and the hunger and the absolute certainty in his gaze. "That you're my wife." The world tilted, and before I could speak, before I could breathe, before I could ask him if he was insane, he turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the dark with nothing but his words echoing in my head like a promise or a threat. Chapter 2. The contract I never signed. I didn't sleep. How could I? When every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, standing in that alley, telling me I was his wife like it was fact, like it was inevitable, like my entire life had been rewritten in the space of a single night. By the time dawn broke over my tiny studio apartment, I'd convinced myself it was a hallucination, stress, exhaustion. Maybe the blonde woman's shrill voice had finally broken something in my brain. But then my phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number. "Car arrives at 8 a.m. Wear something that says you belong." My hands shook as I stared at the screen. This was real. This was happening. I should have ignored it. Should have blocked the number, packed a bag, maybe fled to New Jersey and changed my name. Instead, I opened my closet. At 7:58 a.m., a black Mercedes SUV pulled up in front of my building. Tinted windows, no license plate I could see clearly. The kind of vehicle that screamed, "Don't ask questions." The driver stepped out, tall, stone-faced, built like he wrestled bears for fun. He opened the rear door without a word, his expression making it clear this wasn't a request. I climbed in, my heart hammering against my ribs. The interior smelled like leather and money. Across from me sat a woman in her 50s, silver hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire education. "Miss Hartley," she said, her voice crisp and businesslike. "My name is Celeste Moreau. I'm Mr. Volkov's chief legal counsel. I didn't agree to—" "You will listen," she interrupted smoothly, producing a tablet and swiping through documents with practiced efficiency. "3 years ago, your late father, David Hartley, borrowed $12 million from Volkov Enterprises to cover medical expenses for your mother's treatment. The air left my lungs. Father had died when I was 19. Cancer. My mother followed 6 months later. I'd been alone ever since, drowning in student loans and grief, working myself to the bone just to survive." "That's impossible," I whispered. "He never—" "The loan was contingent upon certain collateral." Celeste turned the tablet toward me. I stared at the document on the screen, my vision blurring as I read the words. "In the event of default, repayment shall be rendered through the marital union of David Hartley's eldest daughter, Elena Hartley, to Dominic Volkov, binding said union for a minimum period of 2 years. No. The word came out strangled. No, this isn't legal. You can't. It's a private contract, Miss Hartley, signed and notarized. Your father agreed to these terms to save your mother's life. Celeste's expression didn't change, but something almost like pity flickered in her eyes. The debt came due 6 months ago. Mr. Volkov has been patient. The car turned onto a tree-lined street in Midtown, slowing in front of a sleek glass tower that seemed to pierce the sky. Why now? I demanded, my voice shaking. Why wait 3 years and then... Because yesterday, Celeste said quietly. You caught his attention. The boardroom was on the 45th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the morning sun casting everything in gold. A long mahogany table dominated the center, surrounded by leather chairs. And at the head of that table, reading through a file with absolute focus, sat Dominic Volkov. He looked up as I entered. The same storm-gray eyes. The same impossible presence that had stopped my breath in the restaurant. But here in his domain, he was something else entirely, untouchable, absolute, terrifying. Gentlemen, he said, without looking away from me. Leave us. The room emptied in seconds. Lawyers, assistants, men in expensive suits, all of them vanished like smoke, closing the doors behind them. Silence pressed down like a weight. Sit, Dominic said. It wasn't a request. I forced my legs to move, sinking into the chair across from him, my hands clenched in my lap to stop them from shaking. You read the contract, he said, not a question. You can't do this. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I don't care what my father signed. You can't force someone into marriage like I'm property. No, he agreed softly. I can't. Hope flared in my chest. But I can destroy you. And died just as quickly. He leaned back, his gaze never leaving mine. You're 25 years old. No family, no assets. $53,000 in student debt. Another $18,000 on credit cards. Your apartment lease is up in 2 months. And your landlord has already started eviction proceedings because you're 3 weeks behind on rent. Each word was a knife. You lost your job last night, he continued, his tone almost gentle, which means you have no income, no references, and no prospects. In approximately 6 weeks, Elena, you'll be homeless. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Or, Dominic said, sliding a folder across the table, you honor your father's agreement. 2 years. You play the role of my wife in public, attend events, smile for cameras, convince the world this is real. And in private? I whispered. Something dark flickered across his face. In private, you stay out of my way. I opened the folder. Inside was another contract. Pages of legal text I couldn't focus on through the haze of panic and fury. You'll want to read Section 7, he said. The part where I clear every cent of your debt. The part where I pay for you to finish law school. The part where, after 2 years, you walk away with $5 million and your freedom. My head snapped up. Why? Why what? Why me? The words burst out raw and desperate. You're Dominic Volkov. You could have anyone. Why would you need a fake wife? Why would you need this? For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not softness. Nothing about this man was soft. But something human. Because, he said quietly, the people trying to kill me believe I have no weaknesses, no attachments, nothing they can use against me. He stood, buttoning his jacket. His eyes locked on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. But a wife? A wife they'll underestimate. A wife they'll see as leverage. Ice flooded my veins. You want to use me as bait. I want to keep you alive, he corrected. Which is more than I can say for anyone else who gets close to me. He rounded the table, stopping beside my chair. This close, I could feel the heat of him, the raw power that seemed to radiate from his skin. Sign the contract, Elena, he murmured, or spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved yourself. He placed a pen on the table and walked out. I sat there, alone in that glass tower, staring at the contract that would either save me or destroy me. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. I signed my name. The door opened. Celeste appeared, collecting the folder with a small, knowing smile. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Volkov." The words hit me like a bullet, and somewhere in the building, I swore I heard him laugh. Chapter 3. The Wife He Didn't Want. They moved me into his penthouse that afternoon. I didn't have much to pack. A duffel bag of clothes, some textbooks, a photograph of my parents I kept hidden under my pillow. Everything I owned fit into the trunk of the Mercedes that had become my prison on wheels. The building was in Tribeca, all steel and glass and the kind of security that involved retinal scanners and men with guns hidden under tailored suits. The elevator required a fingerprint I didn't have yet, so Celeste pressed her thumb to the panel and we ascended in silence, my stomach dropping with each passing floor. "Mr. Volkov has business in Boston," Celeste said without looking at me. "He'll return tomorrow evening. I suggest you use the time to acclimate." The doors opened directly into the penthouse. I stepped out and forgot how to breathe. It wasn't an apartment. It was a kingdom, floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 sides, offering a view of Manhattan that looked like something out of a dream, the Hudson River glittering in the afternoon sun, the city sprawling endlessly in every direction. The interior was all clean lines and dark wood, modern furniture that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime, art on the walls that I recognized from museums. But it was the silence that struck me most. Absolute. Suffocating, like walking into a mausoleum. "Your room is the second door on the left," Celeste said, already turning back toward the elevator. "Mr. Volkov's is at the end of the hall. Do not enter it. Do not touch his things. Do not—" "Let me guess," I interrupted, surprised by the bitterness in my own voice. "Don't exist unless he needs me for a photo op?" Celeste paused, something almost like sympathy crossing her face. "He's not what you think," she said quietly. "Then what is he?" She didn't answer. The elevator doors closed and I was alone. I found my room as if I had any claim to this place, and nearly laughed. It was bigger than my entire apartment. King-size bed with white linens that looked like clouds. A walk-in closet already filled with clothes I hadn't chosen. Dresses, shoes, jewelry, all in my exact size. A bathroom with marble counters and a shower big enough for 4 people. A gilded cage. I dropped my duffel on the floor and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. What have I done? My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, hope flaring. Maybe it was someone I knew, someone from my old life. But it was him. The closet has everything you'll need. "There's an event tomorrow night. Wear the black dress. Second from the left." Dino greeting. No explanation. Just orders. I typed back before I could stop myself. "I'm not your doll." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "No. You're my wife." "There's a difference, is there?" This time the response was immediate. "You'll find out." I stared at the words, my pulse racing, before I threw my phone onto the bed and stormed out of the room. I didn't care that Celeste had told me not to explore. Didn't care that this place felt like a trap I'd walked into willingly. I needed to move. Needed to prove to myself I wasn't completely powerless. The penthouse had 3 floors connected by a spiral staircase that belonged in a European palace. The second floor was living space, kitchen, dining room, a library that made my law student heart ache with longing. The 3rd floor was locked. Of course it was. I tried the handle anyway, then pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. Looking for something? I spun around so fast I nearly fell. A man stood at the top of the stairs, late 20s, dark skin, sharp suit, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He moved like Dominic did, all controlled power and hidden danger. "Who are you?" I demanded, hating how my voice shook. "Marcus Kane, head of security." He descended the last few steps, studying me with the intensity of someone trained to see through lies. "You must be the new Mrs. Volkov." "I'm not—" I stopped myself. "I am. I signed the contract." Wore the ring they'd slipped onto my finger in the car. A massive diamond that felt like a shackle. "It's complicated. It always is with him." Marcus nodded toward the locked door. That's his office. No one goes in without permission. Not even you. Especially not me, I muttered. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He didn't tell you much, did he? He told me to wear a black dress and smile. I crossed my arms. That's about it. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then sighed. Look, I don't know what arrangement you two have, and it's not my business. But Dominic Volkov doesn't do anything without a reason. If he brought you here, made you his wife, even on paper, it's because he thinks you're strong enough to survive it. Survive what? This life. He gestured around us, but I understood he meant something bigger. The enemies. The violence. The things you'll see and can't unsee. Fear coiled in my stomach. What have I gotten myself into? Marcus's expression softened, just barely. Something that might save you. Or destroy you. Depends on how you play it. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The event tomorrow night? It's not just a party. It's a statement. Every crime family in New York will be there, watching, waiting to see if you're real or just another lie he's selling. And if they figure out I'm the latter, Marcus met my eyes. Then we all die. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Every sound made me jump. The hum of the elevator, the distant wail of sirens, the creak of the penthouse settling like a living thing. I thought about running, about tearing up the contract and disappearing into the city I'd lived in my whole life. But Celeste's words echoed in my head. 53,000 in debt. 18,000 on credit cards. 6 weeks until you're homeless, and worse, Dominic's words. The people trying to kill me believe I have no weaknesses. I was trapped. Not by walls or locks, but by debt and desperation, and a man whose eyes saw straight through me. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Another message. Sleep well, Elena. Tomorrow you become mine in the eyes of everyone who matters. I hope you're ready. I stared at the words until they blurred, and whispered into the darkness. I'm not. Somewhere in Boston, I imagined him smiling. Chapter 4. The Devil Wears. Armani. He returned at sunset. I heard him before I saw him, the elevator opening, footsteps on marble, the low murmur of Marcus's voice reporting something I couldn't make out. I'd spent the entire day in the library, drowning in case law and contracts, trying to pretend this was normal, that I wasn't living in a stranger's home with a ring on my finger and a target on my back. But when those footsteps stopped outside the library door, my heart slammed against my ribs. Dominic leaned against the doorframe, still in his suit from travel, tie loosened, looking like sin and exhaustion wrapped in Italian wool. You found the books, he said. Hard to miss. I closed my laptop, refusing to let him see how his presence affected me, the way the air thickened, the way my skin felt too tight. There are first editions here worth more than most people's houses. You can read them all. Touch them. I don't care. He pushed off the frame, moving into the room with that predatory grace that made me want to run and stay frozen in equal measure. Did you eat? The question caught me off guard. What? Food, Elena. Did you eat today? I hadn't. I'd been too nervous, too angry, too everything. He sighed, a sound that might have been frustration or something else. Kitchen, now. I'm not hungry. I don't care. We stared at each other, a battle of wills in the fading light. His jaw was tight, shadows under his eyes betraying the exhaustion he'd never admit to. For just a second he looked almost human. Then the moment passed. You need strength for tomorrow, he said quietly. The vultures will circle the second you walk in on my arm. They'll look for weakness, fear, any sign you don't belong. Maybe because I don't. Then fake it. He turned toward the door. That's what I pay you for. The words hit like a slap. I stood, anger overriding caution. Is that what I am to you? Just another employee? He stopped but didn't turn around. You want the truth. His voice was low, dangerous. You're a complication I didn't plan for. A variable in an equation that was working perfectly fine without you. Then why? Because my uncle is dying, he said, cutting me off with brutal efficiency. And the families are circling, waiting for the moment I show weakness so they can tear apart everything he built. Everything I've built. Now he turned, and the look in his eyes was pure steel. A man alone is vulnerable. A man with a wife, a partner, is a dynasty. That's what you are, Elena, a fortress. A message that I'm not going anywhere. So I'm a prop. You're a shield. He closed the distance between us in 3 strides, stopping close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. And whether you like it or not, as of tomorrow, your life depends on selling this lie as much as mine does. His proximity was overwhelming. Heat and cologne and something darker, something that made my pulse race for reasons I didn't want to examine. What happens if I can't? I whispered. His expression shifted, something almost like regret flickering across his face, before he locked it away. Then I bury you next to all the others who underestimated this world. He left, and I stood there shaking, wondering if that was a threat or a promise. At midnight, I gave up on sleep and wandered down to the kitchen. The penthouse was different in darkness, less museum, more maze. Shadows pooled in corners, the city lights filtering through windows like ghosts. I was halfway to the refrigerator when I heard it. Voices, low, urgent, coming from the locked office upstairs. I should have gone back to bed. Should have remembered Marcus's warning, Celeste's rules, every rational instinct screaming that some doors stay closed for a reason. Instead, I climbed the stairs. The office door was cracked open now, light spilling into the hallway. I crept closer, my heart hammering, and peered through the gap. Dominic stood at a desk, back to the door, staring at a wall of monitors showing security feeds from across the city. Marcus was beside him, arms crossed, expression grim. "The Italians are asking questions," Marcus said. "Salvatore wants a meeting. He wants to see if she's real." Dominic's voice was flat, emotionless. "If the marriage is legitimate or just another move on the board. And if he figures out it's the latter." Silence. Then, "He won't. You sound certain." "I am." Dominic turned slightly, his profile sharp in the monitor's glow. "Because by the time tomorrow night is over, everyone in that room will believe Elena Hartley loves me enough to die for me." My breath caught. "And how exactly do you plan to sell that?" Marcus asked. Dominic's smile was cold, calculated. "The same way I sell everything, with absolute conviction and just enough truth to make it believable. She's not like the others," Marcus warned. "She's not playing this game willingly. She signed the contract. She signed away her life to escape debt. That's not the same as, I don't need her love, Marcus." Dominic's voice went quiet, dangerous. "I need her obedience, her compliance, her ability to stand beside me and not flinch when the monsters come out to play." He paused. "Everything else is irrelevant." Something cracked inside my chest. I stepped back, the floor creaking under my weight. Both men turned. Dominic's eyes found mine through the gap, widening for just a fraction of a second before his expression went completely blank. "How long have you been standing there?" His voice was soft. Too soft. I lifted my chin, refusing to show fear even as my hands shook. "Long enough." Marcus muttered something under his breath and slipped past me, leaving us alone. Dominic approached slowly, each step measured until he stood in the doorway, blocking any escape. "You should be asleep," he said. "You should be honest." The words came out sharper than I intended. "You said I was a shield. You didn't say I was a puppet. Would it have changed anything? Would you have walked away?" I wanted to say yes, wanted to throw his money and his contracts and his cold, calculated plans back in his face. But we both knew the answer. "Tomorrow night," Dominic said quietly. "You'll smile. You'll touch my arm. You'll look at me like I'm the only man in the room. And when Salvatore asks if you love me," his gray eyes burned into mine, "you'll say yes. And if I don't?" He leaned in, close enough that I felt his breath against my ear. "Then we'll both find out just how good an actress you really are." He closed the office door, locked it, and left me standing in the dark, wondering if I'd just made a deal with the devil, or if I'd been his all along. Chapter 5. Playing the part. The black dress fit like a second skin. I stared at myself in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. The dress was Valentino. Celeste had informed me with clinical efficiency, sleeveless, high neck, falling to just above my knees in a way that was both elegant and devastating. My hair had been styled by someone who'd appeared at the penthouse at 4 p.m., twisting it into an elaborate updo that exposed my neck and shoulders. Makeup that made my eyes look larger, darker, dangerous. I looked like I belonged in Dominic Volkov's world. The illusion was perfect. The reality was that I was terrified. "He's waiting," Celeste said from the doorway, her expression unreadable as always. "Remember, touch his arm. Look in love." I turned from the mirror, my voice hollow. "I know the script. It's more than that." Celeste stepped closer, and for the first time, I saw something like concern in her eyes. "The families will test you. They'll ask personal questions, try to trip you up, look for inconsistencies. You need a story." "What story?" "The truth," a deep voice said from behind her. Dominic filled the doorway, and the air left my lungs. He wore a tuxedo that looked custom-made, because of course it was, sharp lines and dark fabric that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His hair was styled back, jaw clean-shaven, and those storm gray eyes, they traveled over me slowly, assessing, cataloging, and something flickered in their depths that I couldn't name. "You look perfect," he said, his voice low. "I look like a liar." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Then you'll fit right in." Celeste excused herself, leaving us alone. Dominic approached, pulling something from his pocket, a long velvet box. "What's that?" "Authenticity." He opened it, revealing a diamond necklace that probably cost more than a small country. "Turn around." I hesitated, then obeyed, feeling his hands brush against my neck as he fastened the clasp. His fingers lingered for just a moment, warm against my skin, before he stepped back. "There," he murmured. "Now you look like a Volkov." I turned to face him, touching the necklace. "You didn't answer my question yesterday. What story am I supposed to tell? That you're a law student. That we met 6 months ago at a charity function. That I pursued you relentlessly until you finally agreed to dinner." His eyes held mine. That I proposed 3 months later because I knew, the way men like me always know, that you were the only woman who could ever stand beside me. "That's actually believable," I admitted, "because it's partially true." He adjusted his cufflinks, not looking at me. "We did meet 6 months ago, Elena, you just don't remember." My heart stuttered. "What? January? Hospital fundraiser. You were working the catering, trying to balance law school and 3 jobs. Now his eyes found mine again, intense and unreadable. "You spilled champagne on Senator Morrison's wife. Instead of apologizing, you looked her in the eye and said, 'At least now your dress matches your personality.'" A memory flickered, hazy, half-forgotten. I had worked that event, had been exhausted and running on caffeine and spite, and when that woman had sneered at me for being clumsy, "You saw that?" "Everyone saw it, but you're the only person I've ever watched walk away from power without flinching." Something shifted in his expression. "I remembered you." "So this whole thing, the contract, the marriage, was opportune," he finished. "Your father's debt came due. I needed a wife. And you—" He trailed off, then shook his head. "We should go. The car's waiting." He offered his arm. I stared at it for a long moment, understanding that this was the point of no return. Once we walked through those doors together, I wouldn't be Elena Hartley anymore. I'd be Mrs. Volkov, his wife, his shield, his lie made flesh. I took his arm. His muscle tensed under my touch, and I felt the heat of him even through the fabric. "One rule," Dominic said quietly as we moved toward the elevator. "No matter what happens tonight, no matter what you see or hear, you stay with me. You don't leave my side. Understand? Why? What's going to happen?" The elevator doors opened. He guided me inside, his hand settling on the small of my back, possessive and protective in equal measure. "Everything," he said. The event was at the plaza. We arrived in a Rolls-Royce that had been customized to survive a military assault. Bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, Marcus driving with another guard in the passenger seat. The city blurred past in streaks of light, and I focused on breathing, on not letting Dominic see how badly my hands were shaking. "Salvatore will approach first," Dominic said, his voice low and instructional. "He runs the Italian families. Old world, traditional. He'll be respectful to your face and calculating behind it." Should I be afraid? Of Salvatore? No. His hand found mine, our fingers interlacing in a way that felt too natural, too real. Of what he represents? Yes, the car stopped. Cameras flashed against the windows like lightning, press and society photographers already swarming. "Ready?" Dominic asked. "No." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He squeezed my hand once, then released it, his expression shifting into something cold and untouchable. The mask he wore for the world. "Remember, you love me. You chose me, and nothing they say can change that." The door opened. The noise hit first, shouts, camera clicks, the surge of bodies pressing against the barriers. Then the lights, blinding and hot. Marcus appeared, offering his hand to help me out, and I stepped into the chaos on legs that felt like water. Dominic emerged behind me, and the crowd's roar intensified. He slid his arm around my waist, pulling me close, and for a moment I forgot it was fake. Forgot that we were strangers bound by contracts and lies, because the way he looked at me, intense, possessive, absolutely certain, it felt real. "Smile," he murmured against my ear, his breath warm. "They're watching," I smiled, and as we walked up the red carpet together, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a performance. This was a declaration of war, and I was standing at the center of it, holding the hand of the most dangerous man in New York, praying I'd survive the night. We reached the doors. Dominic paused, turning to face me, his eyes searching mine. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Meant only for me. Walk away now and I'll find another way." I should have run. Instead, I lifted my chin and met his gaze. "I'm already here," I said. "Let's finish this." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. Before he nodded, we walked inside, and the game began. Chapter 6. When Monsters Smile. The ballroom was a kingdom of crystal and sin. Chandeliers dripped from vaulted ceilings like frozen tears. Men in tuxedos moved through the crowd with the careful grace of predators. Women in gowns worth small fortunes laughing behind champagne flutes. Music played, something classical, elegant, but underneath it all, I felt the current of violence, of power shifting like tectonic plates. This wasn't a party. It was a summit of wolves. "Dominic." A voice boomed across the room. "You actually came." We turned as a man approached. 60s, silver hair, expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the thickness of someone who'd fought his way to power. His smile was warm, but his eyes were calculating, measuring me like livestock. "Salvatore," Dominic said smoothly, his hand tightening almost imperceptibly on my waist. "You look well. You look married." Salvatore's gaze settled on me, sharp and invasive. "And you must be the mysterious Mrs. Volkov. The whole city's been whispering about you." "Elena," I said, extending my hand and forcing my voice to stay steady. "It's a pleasure." He took my hand and kissed it. Old world. Traditional. His lips lingering just a fraction too long. "Tell me." "Cara," Salvatore said, still holding my hand, "how does a woman like you end up with a man like Dominic? Surely you know his reputation." "I do," I said, pulling my hand back gently. "That's why I married him." Salvatore's eyebrows rose. "Brave. Or foolish?" "Neither." I looked up at Dominic, and the lie came easier than it should have. "I married him because he's the only man I've ever met who doesn't need to prove he's dangerous. He just is." Dominic's expression didn't change, but I felt the shift in his body. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. Salvatore laughed, a booming sound that turned heads. She has teeth. I like that. He clapped Dominic on the shoulder. You chose well, amico. We should talk later. Business. He walked away, melting back into the crowd, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. You did well, Dominic murmured, guiding me toward the bar. I lied. Beautifully. His thumb traced small circles on my hip, and I hated how much I noticed. But you also told the truth. I am dangerous, Elena, don't forget that. Before I could respond, another couple approached, younger, polished. The woman's smile sharp enough to cut glass. Dominic, she purred, her eyes raking over me with barely concealed disdain. I heard you'd gotten married. How unexpected. Vanessa, Dominic said, his tone cooling several degrees. Elena, this is Vanessa Chen. She runs operations in Chinatown. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just an introduction. This was a test. It's wonderful to meet you, I said, matching her smile with one of my own. Dominic's told me so much about his associates. Associates. Vanessa's laugh was like broken glass. Is that what we're calling it now? She stepped closer, voice dropping to something almost intimate. Tell me, Elena, does he still have that scar on his... Vanessa. Dominic's voice cut through the air like a blade. Walk away, her smile faltered. For a moment, I saw something raw in her eyes. Hurt, maybe, or rage, before she masked it with practiced ease. Of course. Congratulations on your marriage. She disappeared into the crowd. I turned to Dominic, questions burning, but his expression had gone completely blank. Old flame? I asked, keeping my voice light even as something uncomfortable twisted in my chest. Old mistake, he corrected, and one that's not relevant to us. Because we're not real. His jaw tightened. Because she's not you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Before I could process them, the lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the stage at the far end of the ballroom, and a man in a white tuxedo appeared, older, distinguished, moving with the careful steps of someone in pain. That's my uncle, Dominic said quietly. Victor Volkov, the man who was dying. The reason this whole charade existed. Victor's voice carried across the ballroom, strong despite his obvious illness. Thank you all for coming. Tonight is a celebration of family, of tradition, of the bonds that keep our world turning. His eyes found Dominic across the crowd. And of new beginnings. My nephew has found a partner worthy of carrying the Volkov name forward. Dominic, Elena, come. My heart stopped. He's calling us up. I whispered. I know. Dominic's hand found mine, threading our fingers together. Trust me. We moved through the crowd, every eye on us, conversations dying as we passed. The stage felt miles away, the walk endless, but finally we stood beside Victor under the spotlight's glare. Victor looked at me with eyes that missed nothing. So this is the woman who tamed the untamable. Uncle, Dominic started. I like her, Victor interrupted, a small smile playing on his lips. She's afraid, but she's here. That takes courage. He turned to address the room. In our world, strength is everything. But so is loyalty. Love. The willingness to stand beside someone even when the ground is burning beneath your feet. He looked back at us. Show them. Dominic went very still. Uncle, this isn't... Show them you're real, Victor said quietly, but the words carried across the silent ballroom. Kiss your wife, Dominic. Prove to everyone here that this isn't another move on the board. Panic flooded my veins. This wasn't part of the plan. We'd talked about smiles, about touches, about playing the part, but not this. Not in front of 300 people whose entire existence depended on reading lies. I looked up at Dominic. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Something caught between regret and something far more dangerous. Elena, he said softly, so only I could hear. I'm sorry. Then his hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone, and the world narrowed to just him. His eyes, his breath, the heat of his body inches from mine. "Make it real," he whispered, and he kissed me. The world exploded. His lips were softer than I'd imagined, moving against mine with a hunger that felt too genuine to be fake. His other hand slid to the small of my back, pulling me flush against him, and I gasped, giving him access to deepen the kiss, his tongue sweeping against mine in a way that made my knees weak. This wasn't a performance. This was possession. The crowd erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. All I could feel was him, the thundering of his heart against mine, the way his fingers tightened in my hair like he was afraid I'd disappear, the low sound that rumbled in his chest when I kissed him back without thinking. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, eyes closed. His voice rough. "That was..." Gunshots shattered the air, screams erupted. The lights went out, and Dominic's body slammed into mine, dragging me to the floor as the world descended into chaos. Chapter 7. Blood on Valentino. Darkness. Screams. The sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the ballroom like thunder. Dominic's weight pressed me into the floor, his body a shield between me and whatever hell had erupted around us. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, could only feel the frantic hammer of his heart against my back and the iron grip of his hands holding me down. "Stay down," he growled in my ear, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos. "Don't move. Don't speak. More shots. Closer this time." Glass shattered, one of the massive chandeliers crashing to the floor in an explosion of crystal. Someone was sobbing, someone else shouting orders, and underneath it all, the sickening sound of bodies hitting marble. "Dominic!" Marcus's voice cut through the darkness. "East exit now." Dominic hauled me to my feet in one fluid motion, his arm like steel around my waist. "Run." We moved through the darkness, blind, stumbling over debris and bodies I couldn't see but felt under my heels. Someone grabbed my arm. I screamed. But Dominic's fist connected with something that made a wet, crunching sound, and the grip released. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in hellish red, and I saw the carnage. Bodies on the floor, blood pooling across white marble, men in suits firing at shadows, muzzle flashes illuminating faces twisted with rage and fear. This wasn't a robbery. Wasn't random. This was an assassination attempt. Move. Dominic shoved me toward a service door where Marcus waited, gun drawn, his expression grim, behind us. Victor stood on the stage, blood spreading across his white tuxedo, Salvatore holding him upright while their guards formed a protective circle. "Your uncle," I gasped, "is already dead," Dominic said flatly. "We need to go." Marcus led us through a service corridor, narrow, dim, the sounds of chaos fading behind steel doors. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. The heels I'd worn to look like a Volkov were weapons against me now. But I didn't stop, didn't slow, because Dominic's hand was locked on mine, and I could feel his terror bleeding through his iron control. We burst into a loading dock. The Rolls-Royce idled, another guard at the wheel. "Get in," Marcus ordered. Dominic practically threw me into the back seat, diving in after me as bullets sparked off the car's reinforced exterior. The driver floored it, tires screaming, and we rocketed into the night. For a long moment, there was only the sound of ragged breathing. Then Dominic pulled out his phone, his hands steady despite everything. "Victor," a pause. His face went completely blank. "Understood." He ended the call. "Dom, he's alive," Dominic said, his voice hollow. "The bullet missed anything vital. He'll recover." He looked at me then, really looked at me, his eyes scanning for injuries I didn't have. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. His hand came up, trembling slightly, brushing hair from my face. "You did well. You didn't panic." I was terrified. Fear is smart. His thumb traced my jaw, the gesture almost tender. Most people who walk into our world don't survive their first real night. "You did. Is this..." My voice cracked. "Is this normal for you?" Something dark flickered across his face. "Yes." The weight of that single word crushed me. This was his life. Violence and blood and survival measured in split-second decisions, and I'd signed up to stand beside him, to play his wife, to be the shield that protected him from enemies who shot first and asked questions never. "I want to go home," I whispered. "We can't." Dominic's expression hardened. "The penthouse might be compromised. We're going to the safe house. Where? Somewhere they'll never find us." The safe house was in Red Hook, buried in a warehouse district that looked abandoned. The driver pulled into an underground garage, metal doors slamming shut behind us with finality that felt like a coffin closing. Marcus exited first, sweeping the space with military precision. Clear. Dominic helped me out of the car, and I realized I was shaking, full body tremors I couldn't control. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving nothing but bone-deep exhaustion and the horrible replay of gunfire, screaming, blood. "Here." Dominic shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket, draping it over my shoulders. It was warm from his body, smelling like cologne and gunpowder. "Stairs are this way." The safe house was 3 floors above the garage, an industrial loft converted into something livable. Exposed brick, minimal furniture, windows covered with metal shutters. A fortress pretending to be an apartment. Marcus disappeared to secure the perimeter. The door locked with multiple deadbolts, and then it was just us. "Sit," Dominic ordered, guiding me to a worn leather couch. He vanished into the kitchen, returning with a glass of amber liquid. "Drink. It's not optional." I took the glass, the whiskey burning down my throat, and suddenly I couldn't hold it together anymore. The glass slipped from my fingers. Dominic caught it, and I buried my face in my hands, shoulders shaking with sobs I'd been holding back since the first gunshot. "I almost died," I choked out. "People did die. That man on the floor, he was, oh God, Elena." Dominic's hands gripped my shoulders. "Look at me." I couldn't. "Look at me." I raised my head, tears streaming, and found him kneeling in front of me, his eyes intense and achingly human. "You're alive," he said firmly. "You're here. You're safe. How can you say that? How can you live like this?" "Because I don't have a choice." His hands moved to cup my face, thumbs wiping away tears. "This is the world I was born into. The legacy I inherited. I can't change it, Elena. I can only survive it." "I don't know if I can," I whispered. "You already did." His forehead pressed against mine, the gesture so intimate it stole my breath. "Tonight, when the shooting started, you didn't freeze. You ran with me, trusted me. That takes more strength than you know." I was terrified. So was I. The admission shocked me. "You? Of losing you." The words came out raw, unguarded. "When those shots fired, all I could think was that they'd kill you to hurt me. That I'd brought you into this world and it would destroy you before I could..." He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "Before you could what?" His eyes met mine, gray and stormy and filled with something that made my heart stutter. "Before I could figure out if you were real," he said quietly. "If this," he gestured between us, "is real." My breath caught. The kiss wasn't acting. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Not for me. The air between us charged with electricity, dangerous and magnetic." I should have pulled away, should have reminded him this was a contract, a business arrangement, that everything we'd done tonight was performance. But I was exhausted, terrified, and he was looking at me like I was the only real thing in his world of smoke and mirrors. "Dominic," I breathed. He kissed me. Not like before, not for show or strategy. This was desperate, consuming, his hands tangling in my hair as he claimed my mouth like a drowning man finding air. I kissed him back with equal hunger, my fingers gripping his shirt, pulling him closer, needing the confirmation that we were both alive, both here, both real. He lifted me, my legs wrapping around his waist as he carried me across the loft. My back hit a wall, gentle despite the urgency, and his lips moved to my neck, my collarbone, each kiss setting fire to my skin. "Tell me to stop," he rasped against my throat. I didn't. Chapter 8. The morning after the storm. I woke to unfamiliar silence. No city sounds. No sirens or car horns or the ambient hum of Manhattan that had been my lullaby for 25 years. Just quiet, heavy and complete, pressing down like wool. Memory returned in fragments. The ballroom, gunfire, blood. Dominic. I sat up, the unfamiliar sheets pooling around my waist, and realized 3 things simultaneously. 1, I was wearing a man's t-shirt that wasn't mine. 2, I was alone in a bed I didn't remember getting into. 3, the space beside me was cold. Panic fluttered in my chest. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, bare feet hitting concrete floor, and took stock of my surroundings. The loft in daylight was stark, industrial, functional, completely lacking the opulence of Dominic's penthouse. This wasn't a home. This was a hiding place, and somewhere in this fortress, the man who'd kissed me like I was oxygen was avoiding me. I found clothes folded on a chair, black leggings, a sweater, both suspiciously close to my size, and dressed quickly before venturing out. The main room was empty, kitchen spotless, no coffee brewing, no signs of life, but voices carried from somewhere above, muffled, tense. I followed them to a narrow staircase leading to what looked like an office. The door was cracked open. "Can't identify the shooters," Marcus was saying. "No bodies left behind, no casings that tell us anything useful. Professionals." It was the Calabrese family. Dominic's voice was cold, controlled. "They've been waiting for an excuse to move on us since my father died." "You don't know that. I know they're the only ones with enough resources and stupidity to attack a summit. They wanted to send a message, then we sent one back." This voice was new, female, sharp as glass. "Take out their distribution networks, cripple them financially before they can retaliate, and start a war that kills hundreds." Dominic's tone could have frozen fire. "No, then what's your play?" the woman demanded. Silence. Then quietly, "I need to keep Elena safe." My heart stopped. "The wife?" The woman's laugh was bitter. "Dom, she's a civilian. She doesn't belong in this. Send her away, pay her off, end the contract." "No," the word was absolute. "She stays. And anyone who touches her answers to me personally." I pressed my hand against the doorframe, something warm and terrifying blooming in my chest. "You're compromised," the woman said. "This girl has gotten under your skin in 3 days. That makes you weak. That makes me human," Dominic countered. "Something you've forgotten how to be, Irina." A chair scraped. Footsteps approached the door. I barely had time to step back before it swung open, revealing a woman in her 30s. Sharp suit, dark hair pulled back severely, eyes that could cut diamond. She looked me up and down with open disdain. "So you're the complication," she said. "Irina." Dominic appeared behind her, his expression unreadable. "Leave." With pleasure, she brushed past me, pausing at the top of the stairs. "Fair warning, Mrs. Volkov. Men like Dominic don't get happy endings. They get graves, and everyone who loves them ends up in the plot next door." She descended, her heels clicking on concrete, leaving silence in her wake. Dominic stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, looking exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled, hair mussed, shadows under his eyes betraying sleeplessness I now understood. "She's wrong," I said. "Is she?" He moved past me into the office, running a hand through his hair. "Last night I pulled you into a war zone. Today I'm keeping you prisoner in a safe house because leaving means making you a target. Tomorrow He stopped himself. "Tomorrow what?" "Tomorrow I'll have to decide if keeping you alive is worth more than keeping you close." He turned to face me, and the anguish in his eyes was devastating. "I'm a selfish bastard, Elena. I want both. But this world doesn't give you both." I crossed the room, stopping in front of him, my heart pounding. "What happened last night was a mistake." The words hit like a slap. "You said it was real," I whispered. "It was." His jaw clenched. "That's why it was a mistake. I can't," he looked away. "I can't care about you. Not really. Because the moment I do, the moment they see it's genuine, They'll use you to destroy me. They already think I'm your wife. A business arrangement they can understand. Leverage, strategy, that's the language they speak. His eyes found mine again. But love? Love is weakness they'll exploit without mercy. So what are you saying? That last night meant nothing? I'm saying it meant everything, he said roughly. And that's the problem. He moved to walk past me, but I caught his arm. Don't, I said. Don't shut me out because you're afraid. I'm not afraid. You're terrified. I stepped closer, close enough to feel his heat, to see the way his pulse hammered in his throat. I can see it. You're scared that if you let yourself feel this, feel us, you'll lose control, that you'll put me in danger. I already have. Then teach me. The words came out fierce, certain. Teach me how to survive your world. Show me how to be more than just a shield. Make me a partner. His eyes searched mine, conflict warring across his features. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then slowly, he reached out and traced my jaw with his thumb, the gesture achingly gentle. I'm asking you to become someone you might not recognize, he said quietly. To make choices that will haunt you, to see things you can't unsee. His hand dropped. I'm asking you to step into the dark and trust I'll keep you from drowning. And if I say yes, then tomorrow we stop pretending. His voice went rough. We make this marriage real in every way that matters, and I teach you how to rule beside me. My breath caught. Why? Because, he said, his gray eyes burning into mine. I'd rather burn this empire to the ground than watch you walk away. The confession hung between us, raw and dangerous. I should have been terrified. Should have demanded he release me from the contract, return me to my normal life, let me pretend the last 3 days had been a fever dream. Instead, I lifted my chin and met his gaze. Then teach me, I said. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, relief, and something far darker. He kissed me, hard and claiming, his hands tangling in my hair, and I kissed him back with equal fervor, understanding that this was the moment I stopped being Elena, Hartley, and became something else entirely, Mrs. Volkov, his wife, his partner, his salvation or his destruction, only time would tell. Which, when we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. We start today, he murmured. No more running. No more hiding. What's the first lesson? His smile was dark, dangerous, and absolutely devastating. How to kill someone who tries to kill you. Chapter 9. Baptism by Fire. The next 72 hours shattered every illusion I'd ever held about the Mafia. It wasn't glamorous. Wasn't romantic. It was cold, calculated brutality dressed in expensive suits and justified by centuries of tradition. And Dominic was its undisputed master. He started my education immediately. No hesitation, no gentle introduction. Just brutal, uncompromising reality. Information is power, he said, spreading surveillance photos across the kitchen table. Know your enemies before they know you. Study their weaknesses, their families, their addictions. I stared at the faces. Men and women who looked normal. Ordinary, except for the notations in Dominic's handwriting. Gambling debt. Mistress in Brooklyn, sick daughter. These are people, I whispered. These are variables, he corrected. The moment you see them as people, you've already lost. The words should have repulsed me. Instead, I found myself studying the photos, memorizing faces, understanding the architecture of a world built on leverage and fear. Marcus taught me to shoot. We descended into a basement range I hadn't known existed. The sound of gunfire echoing off concrete walls as he corrected my stance, my grip, my breathing. Center mass, he instructed. Don't aim for the head, too much risk. Aim for the biggest target and empty the magazine. The recoil jarred my arms, the smell of cordite burning my nostrils, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because every target I hit was practice for the moment someone came for me, for us, and hesitation meant death. Dominic watched from the shadows, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. After I'd put 6 rounds through the target's chest, he approached, taking the gun from my trembling hands. "You flinch," he observed. "I'm shooting at a human silhouette. And when it's a real human, when they're shooting back," his eyes held mine. "Will you hesitate then?" I wanted to say yes, wanted to cling to some shred of the person I'd been 3 days ago. The law student who believed in justice and courts and civilized resolution. But that girl had died in a ballroom filled with gunfire. "No," I said. He smiled, small, genuine, heartbreaking. "Good." Irina returned on day 3, her disdain barely masked behind professional courtesy. "She needs to understand the politics," she told Dominic, ignoring me entirely. "The alliances, the debts, who owes what to whom." "Then teach her," Dominic said. Irina's eyes narrowed. "I'm your strategist, not her tutor. And she's my wife." The word carried weight, authority. "Which means you'll teach her, or you'll find yourself working for someone less forgiving." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Irina's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Fine. Conference room. Now." We spent 6 hours going through family trees, territorial maps, financial networks that crisscrossed continents. Irina was merciless, firing questions, correcting mistakes, pushing until my head spun with names and connections, and the intricate web of power that held New York's underworld together. "The Calabrese family," she snapped. "Who leads them?" "Antonio Calabrese," I answered, exhaustion making my voice flat. "Controls shipping and imports. Has 3 sons. Marco, the eldest, runs enforcement. Luca handles finances. And Giovanni is a liability," Irina finished. "Drug addict, gambling problem, protected because he's blood." She leaned back, studying me with something almost like respect. "You learn fast. I'm motivated. By what? Money? Power?" Her smile was sharp. "Or by him?" "All of the above," I said honestly. She laughed, short, bitter. "At least you're not naive." She stood, gathering her papers. "Word of advice? Don't fall in love with Dominic Volkov. He'll break your heart and call it mercy." Too late. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Irina froze, then turned slowly. "You're serious?" "I don't know." I pressed my palms to my eyes, suddenly overwhelmed. "I don't know what this is. I've known him for days, but when I'm with him, I feel alive," Irina finished softly. "Like you're finally the person you were always meant to be." I looked up, surprised by the understanding in her voice. "I was where you are once," she said. "Young, brilliant, convinced I could handle his world. I thought I was different, special." Her expression hardened. "I wasn't. What happened? I fell in love. And she stopped herself. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand. Dominic doesn't get to keep the things he loves. This life takes them, burns them. And she gestured at me. "You're already burning." She left, taking her warnings with her. But her words stayed, echoing in my mind like a prophecy. That night, Dominic found me on the roof. I discovered the access door by accident, climbing the stairs to clear my head. The rooftop overlooked Red Hook and the harbor beyond, Manhattan's lights glittering like fallen stars across the water. "You shouldn't be up here," he said, emerging from the stairwell. "Too exposed. I needed air." He moved beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched, and for a moment we just stood there, 2 people pretending the world wasn't trying to kill us. "Irina told you her story," he said. "It wasn't a question. She warned me about you." "Good. Someone should." I turned to face him. "She said you don't get to keep the things you love." His jaw tightened. "She's right. What happened between you two?" "Nothing. Everything." He exhaled slowly. "Irina was brilliant, still is. I thought I could protect her, keep her close, give her power without risk. But this world doesn't work that way." She saw things, did things that changed her. And when she finally left, when I let her walk away... He stopped. "You broke her heart. I saved her life." His eyes found mine, haunted. "I won't make that mistake again." "What mistake?" "Caring, loving, keeping you." His hand came up, cupping my face with devastating gentleness. I should let you go, Elena. Release you from the contract, set you up somewhere safe, pay you enough to build the life you deserve. But you won't. No. The word was anguished. Because I'm selfish. Because having you here, in this life, beside me, it's the only time I've ever felt like more than just a weapon. Like maybe I'm still human. My heart cracked. Dominic, I'm in love with you, he said, the confession raw and unguarded. I've been in love with you since you spilled champagne on that woman and didn't apologize. Since you looked at me in that alley like I was insane. Since you signed the contract and didn't run even though you should have. He pressed his forehead to mine. And it's going to get you killed. Tears burned behind my eyes. Then we die together. Elena, I'm not leaving, I said fiercely. I'm not walking away. You taught me to shoot, to strategize, to see this world clearly. And now I'm choosing to stay in it. With you. You don't know. I know enough. I gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. I know you're dangerous. I know loving you might destroy me. But I also know that 3 days ago I was drowning. In debt, in loneliness, in a life that felt like slow suffocation. And then you appeared and made me feel alive. His eyes searched mine, desperate and hungry. Say it, he whispered. Say it so I know this isn't just adrenaline or Stockholm Syndrome or, I love you, I breathed. God help me, but I love you. He kissed me like I was salvation. Desperate, consuming, his hands everywhere, my hair, my waist, sliding under my shirt to find bare skin. I kissed him back with equal hunger, understanding this was surrender and claiming all at once. He lifted me, my legs wrapping around his waist as he carried me toward the stairwell, his mouth never leaving mine. If we do this, he rasped against my lips, if I make you mine in every way, there's no going back. Good, I said. We barely made it to the bedroom. Chapter 10. Empire of Two. The war came for us on a Tuesday. We'd had 5 days, 5 perfect, stolen days, where Dominic taught me his world and I learned to move through it like I belonged. Days spent memorizing faces and territories, nights spent tangled together, learning each other's bodies with the same intensity we'd learned survival. I'd become someone new, someone harder, someone who could look at surveillance photos without flinching, who could hold a gun without shaking, who could smile at dinner parties while mentally cataloging everyone's weaknesses. Mrs. Volkov, his partner, his wife, his equal, but equality in Dominic's world came with a price. I woke to his phone ringing, harsh, insistent. His arm tightened around me briefly before he reached for it. Pressing it to his ear, talk. I couldn't hear Marcus's words, but I saw Dominic's expression change, going from sleep soft to diamond hard in seconds. When? Pause. How many? Another pause, longer this time. Get everyone to the penthouse, now. He ended the call and turned to me, his eyes apologetic. It's time, he said. The Calabresi family had made their move. While we'd been hiding, training, falling in love in our fortress, they'd been preparing. Gathering allies, building forces, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment was now. They hit 3 of our distribution centers, Dominic explained as we raced through pre-dawn streets in the armored SUV. Burned them to the ground, killed 6 of our men, my hands clenched in my lap. 6 men I didn't know, would never know, dead because of the world I'd chosen. This is because of Victor, I said. They think he's weak now. They're testing you. Dominic glanced at me, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Yes. So we show them they're wrong. Marcus looked back from the driver's seat, eyebrows raised. We? She comes to the meeting, Dominic said. It's time they understood what Elena means to this family. The penthouse was already crowded when we arrived. 30 men and women I'd studied, memorized, learned to identify on sight. Enforcers, strategists, captains of various operations, the machinery of Dominic's empire, gathered and waiting. They all stopped talking when we entered. Dominic's hand found mine. Lacing our fingers together, a public statement, a declaration. Most of you have heard the rumors, he said, his voice carrying easily across the room. About my marriage, about whether it's real or strategic. He pulled me close, his arm around my waist. Let me be clear. Elena is my wife in every way that matters. She is under my protection, which means she is under our protection. Anyone who touches her dies. Anyone who threatens her dies. Is that understood? A chorus of assent rippled through the room. But I saw the doubt in some faces, the calculation, the wondering whether I was strength or liability. Time to show them. The Calabrese family is testing us, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. They believe burning a few buildings and killing 6 men will make us back down. They're wrong. Irina watched me with narrow eyes, arms crossed. I continued. They expect retaliation, tit for tat, eye for an eye. They're prepared for that, so we don't give them what they expect. What do you suggest? Irina asked, her tone challenging. We target Giovanni, I said. The youngest son, the one with gambling debts and a cocaine habit. We offer him a deal, protection from his family's debts, a way out of his father's shadow, in exchange for information about their operations. Silence. Then Salvatore, who'd arrived while we were en route, began to laugh. She's suggesting we turn the boy? Make him a traitor to his own blood? I'm suggesting we exploit the weakness they've been hiding for years, I countered. Giovanni is a liability. His father knows it. His brothers know it. We make him our liability. Dominic's fingers tightened on my waist, and I felt his silent approval. It won't work, Irina said. Blood is everything to the Italians. He'll never betray his family. Everyone betrays, I said quietly. For the right price, Dominic turned to Marcus. Set up a meeting with Giovanni, neutral ground, tomorrow night. Marcus nodded, already pulling out his phone. The meeting dissolved into planning, logistics, contingencies, the chess game of power playing out in real time. But I felt the shift in the room, the way eyes that had been skeptical now looked at me with cautious respect. I'd proven I wasn't just decoration. I was dangerous. The meeting with Giovanni happened in a warehouse in Queens. I sat beside Dominic at a folding table, our hands visible, weapons clearly displayed, a show of strength and willingness to negotiate. Marcus stood behind us, stone-faced. Irina to our left, watching everything with calculating eyes. Giovanni Calabrese arrived with 2 guards, young, beautiful in the way damaged men often are, his hands shaking slightly from withdrawal or fear. Mr. Volkov, he said, his voice thin. Mrs. Volkov, I'm told you have a proposition. A way out, Dominic said simply. Your family's debts, your father's disappointment, the pressure of living up to brothers you'll never match. He leaned forward. I can make it all disappear. In exchange for? Information, I said. Shipping routes, financial contacts, everything you know about your family's operations. Giovanni's laugh was bitter. You're asking me to betray my blood. I'm offering you freedom, I corrected. A new life, a new name, enough money to build whatever existence you want, far from your father's reach. And if I refuse? Dominic's expression didn't change. Then your debts come due. Your dealers get arrested. Your father discovers exactly how deep your problems go. He paused. And we both know what he does to sons who bring shame to the family name. The color drained from Giovanni's face. I need guarantees, he whispered. You need trust, I said softly. Trust that we keep our word, that we protect our own, that when you step into our world you'll be safer than you ever were in theirs. Giovanni looked at me for a long moment, something breaking in his eyes. One condition, he said. My sister. She's 17, still in school. She doesn't know anything about the business, but when my father finds out what I've done, his voice cracked. He'll hurt her to punish me. We'll get her out, I promised. Tonight. Before any of this goes public. Dominic's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once. Giovanni nodded slowly. Okay, I'll tell you everything. The information he provided was devastating. Shipping routes, money laundering operations, political contacts reaching all the way to the mayor's office. Everything we needed to dismantle the Calabrese Empire piece by piece. But more importantly, It proved something else. We were no longer pretending. Dominic and I weren't playing at marriage or partnership. We were building something real, an empire of two, bound by love and blood and the understanding that survival meant ruthlessness tempered with mercy. That night, back in the penthouse, we stood at the windows overlooking Manhattan. Giovanni's sister is at the safe house, Dominic said. Marcus will get her new documentation by morning. She'll disappear into witness protection. Good. His arm circled my waist, pulling me back against his chest. You were brilliant today, ruthless and compassionate in equal measure. I learned from the best. He turned me to face him, his eyes searching mine. Do you regret it? Choosing this life? I thought about the girl I'd been a week ago, drowning in debt, working minimum wage, surviving but not living. Then I thought about who I'd become. Powerful, dangerous, alive. No, I said honestly. I don't. He kissed me, soft and reverent, like I was something precious he couldn't quite believe he got to keep. I love you, he murmured against my lips. My wife, my partner, my equal. I love you too, I whispered back. My husband, my king, my everything. Outside, the city glittered, beautiful and brutal and ours. We'd burned our old lives to ash, and from those ashes, built an empire that would never fall. Epilogue. 6 months later. The courtroom fell silent as I approached the bench. 6 months ago, I'd been a terrified law student drowning in debt. Now I stood in Armani, diamond wedding ring catching light, about to argue my first case as a fully licensed attorney, defending one of Dominic's associates from charges I knew were politically motivated. The prosecutor looked at me with barely concealed disdain. Your Honor, I object to counsel's conflict of interest. Mrs. Volkov is a licensed attorney in good standing, the judge interrupted. Her personal life is irrelevant to this proceeding. Objection denied. I smiled, small, professional, deadly, and proceeded to systematically dismantle the prosecution's case. When the jury returned 3 hours later with a not guilty verdict, I felt Dominic's pride like heat against my back. He sat in the gallery, looking like every fantasy of power and danger, his eyes never leaving me. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Volkov, is it true you're taking over legal operations for the Volkov family? Mrs. Volkov, how do you respond to allegations that your marriage is a business arrangement? Dominic materialized beside me, his hand settling on my lower back. Protective, possessive, utterly natural. My wife, he said to the cameras, his voice carrying authority that made even hardened reporters step back, is the most brilliant attorney I've ever seen. Any other questions are irrelevant. We walked to the car through flashing cameras, and the moment the doors closed, he pulled me into his lap, kissing me breathless. You are magnificent, he murmured against my throat. I had a good teacher. In law, in everything. That night, we hosted dinner at the penthouse. Victor, fully recovered and officially retired, raised his glass. To my nephew and his bride, you've done what I never could, brought legitimacy to this family without sacrificing power. Here, Salvatore echoed, grinning, though I still say you two make the rest of us look bad with all this genuine affection nonsense. Laughter rippled around the table. Marcus, Irina, the captains and their partners. The family we'd built together. Later, after everyone left, Dominic and I stood at our usual spot by the windows. Irina's leaving, he said quietly, taking a position in London. Clean break. Is she okay? Getting there. He pulled me close. She told me she was wrong. About us. About whether we'd survive. We did more than survive. We did. His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones. You know what the beautiful thing is? I don't even remember what my life was like before you. Can't imagine going back to it. Good. I kissed him softly. Because I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. For better or worse. Richer or poorer. In violence and in peace. I smiled against his lips. Till death do us part. And maybe not even then, he whispered. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, smiling at the text from Giovanni, now safely living in Oregon under a new name, his sister thriving in college. Thank you. For everything, I showed Dominic. He read it, then pulled me close again. You saved him, he said. We saved him. Together. Together, he agreed. And as we stood there, wrapped in each other, Manhattan glittering at our feet, I understood something fundamental. This wasn't the happy ending of fairy tales. It was darker, more complicated, built on blood and bullets and choices that would haunt us. But it was ours. We'd walked into hell together and emerged as something stronger. Something unbreakable. Dominic's hand found mine, our fingers interlacing, rings catching light. I love you, Elena Volkov, he said. I love you, Dominic, I replied. My husband, my partner, my king. Below us, the city thrummed with life, beautiful and brutal and ours to protect. We'd started as strangers bound by contract. We'd become lovers forged in fire. And now, we were legends, the Mafia king and the woman who'd tamed him without breaking his darkness, who'd stepped into his world and made it our world, the empire of two, unshakable, eternal, ours.